If you've ever walked away quietly after being treated carelessly, there's something most men never realize. The moment you stop explaining yourself is often the moment your presence begins to echo the loudest. Stay with me because near the end of this conversation, something subtle but important will click into place. And if this kind of honest psychological insight helps you see yourself more clearly, take a second to like and subscribe. It tells the algorithm this kind of content matters, and it tells me you're ready for depth, not noise. I want to begin by reframing the idea of fear. When we talk about fear in female psychology, we're not talking about panic or guilt in the dramatic sense. We're talking about quiet internal discomfort, the kind that shows up later, often in silence, reflection, or late-night thoughts, especially after a good man has been hurt. A good man, psychologically speaking, isn't perfect. He's emotionally consistent. He shows up, he listens, he doesn't weaponize affection, and most importantly, he offers safety without trying to control. When a woman hurts a man like this through neglect, dismissal, taking him for granted, it doesn't always register immediately. In fact, at first, it can feel like relief. Relief from accountability, relief from emotional steadiness that quietly asked her to rise. But the first fear begins when the emotional environment changes. The first thing many women fear after hurting a good man is the loss of emotional safety they didn't realize they were standing on. Emotional safety isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It's the calm of knowing someone isn't keeping score, isn't planning an exit, isn't trying to dominate or disappear. When that presence is gone, there's often a strange emptiness that replaces it. Not drama, not chaos, just an absence. And the mind notices absence more sharply than conflict. This is why some women don't miss the man immediately. They miss how they felt around him, regulated, grounded, less guarded. When that feeling fades, the nervous system begins to search for it again. Not because of regret in the moral sense, but because the body remembers what calm felt like for you as a man. This is important to understand. Not so you wait, not so you hope, but so you don't internalize the wrong story. Many men assume, if she hurt me, it must mean I wasn't enough. That assumption quietly damages your self-trust. In reality, hurting a good man often has nothing to do with his value and everything to do with timing, emotional readiness, or unresolved patterns. Here's the subtle psychological truth most men are never taught. People don't fear losing what they think they can replace easily. They fear losing what quietly stabilized them. And when that stabilization is gone, something begins to surface. Not immediately, not dramatically, but internally. Hold that thought because what follows from this fear is far more revealing than most conversations ever become. The second fear tends to arrive later, and it's far more uncomfortable than the first. It's the fear of being accurately seen without the good man there to soften the reflection. When a good man is present, he often acts as an emotional buffer. He interprets generously. He gives the benefit of the doubt. He smooths over moments that might otherwise require self-examination, not because he's weak, but because he values harmony and connection over time. This can unintentionally protect a woman from fully confronting her own patterns. When she hurts him and he steps back, especially if he does so calmly without insults or revenge, that buffer disappears. And this is where the discomfort begins. Without his patience absorbing the emotional impact, she's left alone with a clearer mirror. Not a cruel one, not a judgmental one, but an honest one. She may begin to notice recurring themes, distancing when things get real, dismissing emotional consistency as boring, confusing chaos with chemistry, or assuming she has more time than she actually does to grow. This is not about blame. It's about awareness. Many women don't fear being disliked. They fear being accurately understood by themselves because self-recognition removes excuses. And when a good man leaves without trying to punish or convince, it forces a silent question. If he didn't fight to stay, what did he see that I didn't? That question lingers. For some women, this fear shows up as defensiveness. They rewrite the story. They minimize his role. They convinced themselves he was too passive, too predictable, too emotionally available. These narratives aren't lies in a malicious sense. They're psychological self-P protection, the ego's way of avoiding a deeper reckoning. But internally, something still shifts. Because good men don't usually leave impulsively. They leave after trying quietly, after adjusting, after giving chances without announcing them. So when they finally detach, the absence carries weight, not because of drama, but because of clarity. And clarity can be unsettling. This is where many men make a mistake in their own healing. They assume that because she hasn't reached out, she doesn't care, or because she seems fine, she must be unaffected. But internal psychological processing rarely looks like immediate action, especially when the processing involves identity. To be seen accurately, even in absence, forces growth or avoidance. There's no neutral ground. For you listening to this, the deeper lesson isn't about her fear. It's about your standard. When you are emotionally consistent, self-respecting, and willing to walk away without hostility, you become a reference point, not an obsession. A reference, something future situations are compared against. And that comparison can be uncomfortable for someone who wasn't ready to meet you at that level. This fear isn't loud. It doesn't chase. It sits quietly and reshapes perception over time. And there is one more fear, often the deepest one, that ties everything together. Not about loss, not about self-image, but about something far more permanent. The third fear is the one that most women rarely admit to, even to themselves. It's the fear of permanence. The understanding that some opportunities once missed may never return. After hurting a good man, she often confronts an uncomfortable truth. Stability, emotional safety, and consistent respect are not guarantees. They are rare and they cannot be replaced easily. This fear is different from the others because it's not immediate. It doesn't show up in arguments or during moments of frustration. It emerges in quiet moments late at night while scrolling through memories or in the silence after a meaningful conversation that never happens again. It's the creeping realization that the man she hurt possesses a kind of emotional integrity that cannot be replicated. And for many, that realization carries a weight that touches both the heart and the subconscious mind. A good man's presence isn't just about being available, it's about reliability without expectation. He models respect through action rather than demands. He demonstrates care without manipulation, and he teaches patience without indulgence. When such a man is harmed and steps away, the absence is not just noticeable, it is instructive. It communicates a lesson that words rarely capture. Certain types of love, certain types of commitment are fragile in the face of disregard, and they may never be offered again in the same way. Many women feel a subtle panic in this moment. It isn't about him leaving her forever. It's about the internal awareness that she may not find someone else who can hold the same space for her. Someone who mirrors consistency, empathy, and quiet strength. This isn't about blame or judgment. It's simply the human mind recognizing value too late. And when we recognize value too late, fear manifests not as guilt screaming in public, but as unease, reflection, and sometimes even self-sabotage. Interestingly, this fear often triggers a paradoxical response. Some women pull away even further, afraid to face the permanence of what's been lost. Others begin to seek out validation in ways that mimic the stability they let go of without truly understanding it. Both responses are rooted in the same psychological truth. The rarity of emotional security becomes undeniable. For you listening to this, it's crucial to understand that these fears are not manipulative tools. They are reflections of human consciousness. When you maintain your integrity after being hurt, you do more than protect your own self-respect. You also illuminate the gaps left behind. And those gaps, often invisible in the moment, have a lingering effect that many women process quietly over weeks, months, or even years. So, if you've ever walked away from someone who underestimated your value, know this. Your absence teaches lessons that words cannot. It shows consistency in a world full of uncertainty. It demonstrates that respect is earned not through expectation, but through action. And sometimes it forces a deep, unspoken reckoning with truths that are easier ignored than faced. The subtle power of walking away gracefully is rarely understood, but it is undeniable, and it sets the stage for the patterns we're about to explore next. The ways these fears shape behavior, reflection, and emotional alignment long after the moment has passed. Now that we've explored the three core fears, it's important to understand how they begin to influence behavior, not immediately, but gradually, almost imperceptibly. Women who have hurt a good man often enter a state of quiet reflection, whether consciously or unconsciously. They begin to notice the patterns they took for granted, the steady presence they dismissed, and the patience they misread as passivity. These realizations are subtle, but they shape how she interacts with people afterward, especially emotionally available men. The first behavioral shift is caution. After hurting someone who treated her well, many women instinctively become more guarded, not only with the man she hurt, but with any man who reminds her of him. It's not a conscious punishment or manipulation. It's a natural psychological response to the fear of repeating a loss she didn't fully understand at the time. She may appear distant, less trusting, or even harder to reach emotionally. But under the surface, this distance is a sign of internal recalibration. Her mind is reconciling the fear of losing safety, clarity, and permanence all at once. The second shift is heightened self-awareness. A woman may start noticing what she truly values in a partner: reliability, emotional maturity, calm consistency without fully admitting that she ignored it before. Sometimes this awareness manifests as quiet envy when she observes other men who embody traits she once dismissed. Other times, it emerges in her own reflection, prompting questions like, "Why did I not appreciate him while he was here?" These questions are rarely voiced aloud, but they are powerful. They represent the internal reckoning that most men never see, and it can fundamentally change how she approaches future relationships. The third behavioral shift is subtle regret. Regret doesn't always look dramatic or desperate. Often it's silent and indirect, a pattern of second-guessing choices, feeling unsettled after certain interactions, or finding herself comparing potential partners to the man she once hurt. This isn't about wanting him back in a manipulative sense. It's about recognizing the depth of what was lost. And that recognition is quietly instructive. It can influence how she treats others moving forward, how she navigates vulnerability, and how she approaches emotional honesty. For you listening, this is where understanding female psychology becomes powerful. The behaviors you might notice, distance, introspection, subtle tension, aren't always signals of disinterest. Often they are manifestations of the three fears we discussed: fear of lost emotional safety, fear of being truly seen, and fear of permanence slipping away. Observing these patterns can help you maintain perspective and avoid misinterpretation. What's crucial is that these shifts are not predictable in timing or intensity. Some women process them quickly, others slowly. Some act on them consciously, others unconsciously. But the common thread is this: a good man's absence leaves a lasting impression, and the mind will seek to reconcile that absence long after the relationship ends. Recognizing this helps you detach from confusion and maintain your self-respect. It reminds you that your value was never conditional on her recognition and that her reflections are a product of her own psychological processing, not a judgment on your worth. And when this understanding is internalized, it sets the stage for the next layer: how these fears subtly influence attraction and alignment even after trust has been broken. The way these fears influence behavior goes deeper than casual observation. It affects emotional alignment, attraction, and the way she measures connection with others. When a woman has hurt a good man and experiences these three fears, she often starts comparing all subsequent interactions to that reference point, whether she consciously admits it or not. He becomes, in a psychological sense, the benchmark of emotional safety, clarity, and consistency. This doesn't mean she will chase or return to him. It simply means that her subconscious now recognizes what true stability feels like. And here's where it gets fascinating. Women often find themselves drawn to qualities they undervalued before, not because of guilt, but because their internal standard has been reset. Traits like calmness under pressure, emotional intelligence, and reliability are suddenly more noticeable and more desirable. You might notice this as subtle admiration. Maybe she notices a man who acts with quiet confidence, doesn't react impulsively, or values consistency. These observations aren't always voiced, and they don't always translate to action. But internally, the comparison is being made. Her mind is measuring what she once dismissed against what she encounters now. That comparison can stir curiosity, reflection, or even longing, but it's rarely dramatic or overt. It's slow, deliberate, and deeply psychological. Another shift is in the recalibration of boundaries. When a woman recognizes the stability she lost, she may begin testing herself. How much control can I exercise without pushing someone away? How much freedom can I maintain without undermining connection? These questions are subconscious, but they affect how she navigates relationships moving forward. They're not punishments. They're experiments in emotional recalibration, trying to understand what works when the stabilizing presence is no longer available. And sometimes this realignment triggers a mix of respect and caution. She may feel admiration for the qualities she previously undervalued, but also a subtle fear. Can I find someone who embodies these traits and still allow me the space I crave? Can I engage with this kind of emotional consistency without feeling confined? These questions illustrate the complexity of human psychology. Fear and attraction are intertwined, but not always in obvious ways. For you listening, it's important to notice one truth. The influence of your absence isn't about punishment or manipulation. It's about self-recognition. The man who leaves gracefully without resentment becomes a psychological reference point. He teaches lessons that words cannot simply by maintaining his integrity. His presence lingers in memory and in comparison, shaping emotional awareness for years to come. The final piece of this process, and perhaps the most revealing, relates to how women begin to integrate these fears into personal growth and emotional reflection. It's subtle, often invisible, and deeply instructive. This stage determines whether the experience becomes a source of insight or simply another fleeting regret. And understanding this is essential for any man seeking clarity about his own worth and influence. In the next part, we'll explore the long-term impact of these fears and how they shape not only attraction, but also the kind of respect a man earns even in absence. The long-term impact of these fears is subtle, yet profound. When a woman has hurt a good man, the emotional echoes don't disappear. They linger, quietly influencing her decisions, her perceptions, and even the way she approaches herself. This isn't about punishment or revenge. It's about internal reckoning. The absence of someone who consistently showed patience, empathy, and respect creates a vacuum, and the mind instinctively fills it with reflection. One of the most revealing outcomes is how her standards begin to adjust. She may start noticing behaviors she previously dismissed as normal or unremarkable. Things like emotional consistency, accountability, and calm problem-solving. The man she hurt becomes a subtle benchmark in her mind. She doesn't always articulate it, and she may never directly acknowledge it, but internally she begins to recognize the value of what she lost. This shift often leads to a deeper understanding of her own needs and patterns, even if it comes accompanied by discomfort or regret. Another consequence is increased self-awareness. Women tend to reflect on past decisions when confronted with absence. They notice how they responded under stress, how they communicated or failed to communicate, and how they may have taken emotional safety for granted. These reflections are not about blame. They are about insight. Over time, this self-awareness can lead to emotional growth, a more nuanced understanding of relationships, and a clearer sense of what they truly seek in a partner. Fear also changes how she interacts with others emotionally. Some women become more cautious, hesitant to fully trust, while others test new relationships with greater attention to consistency and integrity. Both responses stem from the same core recognition that stability, emotional safety, and genuine respect are rare, and once lost, are not easily replaced. Even if she doesn't consciously acknowledge it, the experience of losing a good man leaves an invisible imprint on her choices and her emotional navigation. For you listening, this underscores a powerful truth. Your value is not diminished by her actions or mistakes. Walking away with dignity, maintaining your standards, and holding your integrity communicates more than words ever could. It leaves a lasting impression, an unspoken lesson about what healthy connection truly looks like. That influence is subtle, but it is profound. The absence of drama, the absence of resentment, and the presence of self-respect all speak louder than attempts to convince or chase. Finally, it's important to recognize the interplay of fear, reflection, and growth. The fears we've discussed, loss of emotional safety, fear of being truly seen, and fear of permanence, don't exist in isolation. They interact, creating a complex emotional landscape where attraction, admiration, and caution coexist. Understanding this dynamic allows you to approach relationships with clarity, perspective, and self-respect without getting lost in assumptions or overanalysis. And as we move into the final section, we'll explore the subtle ways these fears can manifest in her actions and why the lessons learned from your absence may ultimately define the quality of connection she seeks in the future. In the end, the three fears, losing emotional safety, being truly seen, and facing permanence, leave an indelible mark. They shape her reflection, her choices, and even how she views love. For you, the lesson is simple but powerful. Walking away with integrity teaches more than words ever could. Your consistency, calm, and self-respect create a quiet benchmark that lingers long after you're gone. Sometimes the deepest lessons are learned not in presence but in absence. And when a woman feels what she once overlooked, it's not about regret alone. It's about understanding the value of a good man and the rare clarity he brought into her life. Your role isn't to fix, chase, or convince. It's to be the kind of man whose absence teaches truths that cannot be ignored. That is the quiet, lasting power of being a good man, and the reason why some lessons echo for a lifetime.